Coming up next on KPBS Evening Edition, the head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission visits the troubled San Onofre nuclear power plant.
And a California senator assures the public the plant will not reopen until operators are certain it's safe.
KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Ferrian.
And I'm Peggy Pico in for Dwayne Brown.
Serious problems at the San Onofre power plant prompted a visit today from the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and Congressman Darrell Issa. KPBS reporter Allison St. John joins us from Dana Point with the latest on the plant, which has been shut down for the past 2 months. Allison, what did we learn today from this high-profile visit?
Well, Joanne, I think the fact that the most senior nuclear regulator in the nation came to visit San Onofre today does show that the NRC is very concerned about what's happening there. And what Gregory Yasko said was that basically they will not let Edison restart the plant again until they have discovered exactly what the problem is. So right now, the situation is that the manufactured design of the steam generators of San Onofre is unique. It's different from any other plant in the nation. And that is one reason they're considering now, is it to do with the manufactured design? The only mystery that remains is why is it that Unit 1 and Unit 2 are apparently behaving differently? So they do feel like they're making progress in figuring out what's going on, but they still haven't really got to the bottom of it. And until they do, they will not be able to restart the plant. And that was what the chairman assured everybody today. There were various members of the community here as well.
Quickly before we go, Allison, do we know then, will this mean conservation this summer? Will we have outages?
Yes, when asked when there was a chance it would be turned back on, nobody would make any guarantees. There's a good chance it may not come back in time for the summer, in which case we will be looking at some serious conservation in San Diego because it does provide a significant percentage of our energy.
Thank you, Allison St. John.
A Navy jet crashed into an apartment complex in Virginia Beach today. So far, only minor injuries were reported to the 2 pilots who ejected and several people on the ground. That wasn't the case, unfortunately, in San Diego when the identical type of Navy jet crashed in a University City neighborhood in December 2008. Joining me is KPBS senior news editor Mark Sauer. Mark, tell us about the plane involved in these 2 crashes.
This was a Marine F-18D Hornet. In each case, it's a versatile supersonic jet. The FA stands for Fighter Attack.
And Mark, what happened in the deadly crash here in San Diego back in 2008?
In the San Diego tragedy, a pilot tried making an emergency landing at Marine Corps Station Miramar after an engine failed. Instead of going to North Island, which was closer, he ran out of fuel, ejected, and the plane crashed into a house.
What was the ultimate result of the case here?
Well, a woman and her 2 young daughters and her mother were killed. The victim's family sued and settled recently for $18 million. They had asked for $50 million after the government acknowledged the errors and the pilot and ground personnel.
Mark Sauer, thanks very much.
A U.S. Marine Administrative Board has recommended the so-called anti-Obama Marine be dismissed with an other than honorable discharge. The final decision now rests with the commanding general of Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego. During yesterday's day-long hearing at Camp Pendleton, the board also found Sergeant Gary Stein committed misconduct when he refused to remove negative comments on his Facebook page criticizing President Obama. If discharged, Stein would lose his military benefits and not be allowed on any military installation.
The Padres and Dodgers face off tonight for Game 2 in their 4-game series. The Dodgers beat the Padres 5-3 last night at Petco Park. The first pitch tonight will be at 7:05. Mayoral candidates believe they can fix San Diego City schools, and a group in Escondido wants to change the face of their city council. Joanne has those stories at the Evening Edition Roundtable.
In the last decade, Latinos have become nearly half the population of Escondido, making them that city's single largest ethnic group. But you might not know it if you visited City Hall, where only 2 Latinos have served on the city council in the city's 123-year history. And what's up with the San Diego mayor's race? The debate this week sounded more like a school board election. Should a mayor meddle into school business? Joining me are KPBS education reporter Kyla Calvert and from the KPBS Frontiers desk, Adrian Florido. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Kyla, there was a special mayoral forum this week about education. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, the conversation about how involved the city's mayor should be in city schools sort of started back in November with Nathan Fletcher and Councilman Tony Young doing this educational listening tour. And then Bonnie Dumanis has a plan that would add 4 appointed members to the Board of Education. It would create this financial oversight committee. And then Nathan Fletcher has come out with his own plan to create a foundation to support technology in the classroom. And Carl DeMaio and Bob Filner have sort of gotten onto the bandwagon following those plan releases. And, Carl DeMaio is saying that he'll lead by example and fix the city's finances in order to free up resources for things like rec centers and libraries. And Bob Filner is basically saying that he doesn't want to get involved in school governance at all, and he thinks that the mayor should basically just be a strong advocate for increasing state funding for K-12 education.
So many of the problems around city schools have been budget. I mean, what are the candidates saying about how they're going to fix the budget, which is obviously the biggest issue that's been in the news for the last, as long as I can remember?
That's right. None of the candidates would say that they all said that they would not raise city taxes to support schools, that was not the answer, that San Diego taxpayers are paying enough in terms of city taxes. Bob Filner was the only candidate to say that he supports the governor's tax initiative. They'll be on the November ballot, which would be a temporary increase, and much of that money would go to schools. And then the others basically said that they said that they would not support the governor's tax increase, and that it was about sort of negotiating with the teachers union to reduce the benefits that are getting paid out, basically, and to forego some salary increases that are scheduled to go into effect, and sort of basically doing a better job of managing resources rather than increasing funding for schools. But Bob Filner did make the point during the debate that state funding for K-12 education has decreased by about 20% over the last few years.
Is this a bit of a national trend in terms of now you have these city leaders who are getting involved with school districts?
There are, large cities across the country where mayors have gotten involved in city schools. In New York City, the mayor more or less controls the school system. He appoints the chancellor, appoints many of the people on the sort of board, the equivalent of the Board of Education. In the city of Chicago, the mayor appoints the superintendent. The Villaraigosa in L.A. tried to get a lot more control over the city school system, and actually the state rebuffed him. That was found to be sort of unconstitutional, the control he was trying to take. And so if Bonnie Dumanis, for instance, did want to get those 4 people on the Board of Education, these mayoral appointees, that would be an amendment to the city charter, and voters would have to approve that. And actually, voters, a similar initiative, there was a group collecting signatures to get that onto the ballot in 2010 maybe, or recently, and they couldn't get the signatures. There just wasn't the support for even putting that kind of issue on the ballot.
With education being such a hot topic with voters, and we know a number of polls have pointed to this, is this sort of a political posturing where, okay, let's get in on the debate now that we're all having?
I'm sure all of the candidates would say no, that this is a vital issue for the health of the city, and that's true. And in terms of the city's economy, having an educated workforce is also very important. However, I think that to say that they want strong schools, but they also don't support increasing taxes, it's a popular position to take. Everybody wants strong schools, and nobody wants to pay taxes nobody wants to pay more taxes than they already are paying. So
okay. We're going to move on to the next big story this week. A lawsuit working its way through the court system aims to change the way council members are elected to Escondido City Hall. The plaintiffs claim the current system disenfranchises Latino voters. Now, Adrian, what is the current system right now?
It's called an at-large election system, and essentially it's very simple. What it means is that every member of the city, every resident voter of the city, chooses from among the same slate of candidates. So if there are 5 candidates running for 2 positions on the city council, every member votes for those same candidates, and the top 2 win.
So how would the new system, if this lawsuit is successful, change things?
What it would do was throw out that system and implement district elections. So what it would do is split the city into several districts, if you live within that district, you vote for only the representative who's going to represent your community.
That's what the city of San Diego does, right? But we're the only city in the county that does that right now, apparently?
We're the only city in the entire county that does that, San Diego. Escondido would be the second.
But there are more cities across the state moving to that system, is that right?
There are. Well, so one of the big things, obviously, the reason that they want to do this is because the people who have filed this lawsuit, several Latinos within the city council, feel that the current system disenfranchises Latinos because although they are a very large proportion of the population of the city, as voters they're much smaller and they're concentrated within certain areas of the city. So if you split up the city into districts and allow elections to be more sort of neighborhood and community based, then you give Latinos a better shot at electing within those communities representatives who would have their interests at heart, because as we know, Escondido has a very long history of tension between the Latino community and the largely conservative white city council. So as these sort of demographic shifts have been happening across the state, not only in Escondido, but across San Diego, across the region, a lot of city councils are being challenged under the California Voting Rights Act, which is what's being used to challenge the system in Escondido, because Latino populations and in many cases Asian populations have been exploding in many cities, but you still have sort of school boards, city councils that are sort of dominated by white representatives.
Our own County Board of Supervisors,
sure.
An example of that. You mentioned the law. I think some people may argue the law is on the side of this lawsuit. Doesn't it in fact say that that you can't continue at-large elections if minority groups have trouble electing someone they want to represent them?
Exactly. I mean, the basis of this law is what's called racially polarized voting. In order for a lawsuit like this to be successful, the plaintiffs have to prove that one, ethnic minority candidates, the ethnic minority voters tend to vote differently from white voters, and also there's been some kind of history of discrimination against that group within the city, sort of, at large, and that's kind of the basis of this. If they can prove this in Escondido, then the city will be forced to split up its city into districts and potentially give Latinos a shot at electing one or two more members to the council.
We're out of time. Adrian Florido, Kylie Calvert, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The Chicano Park murals will be especially vibrant for Chicano Park Day. Up next, we'll show you a preview of the restoration. And people living in City Heights are 4 times more likely than the rest of the nation to use public transit and to walk or wheel to transit stops. But broken sidewalks and other hazards don't make it easy.
Tonight on KPBS. At 8, PBS's longest-running public affairs series, featuring Washington's top journalists analyzing the week's news stories. Washington Week. Then at 8:30 on Need to Know, the latest on the economy, the environment and energy, health, security and culture. Broadcast media and the web unite. And at 9, hear stories from Vietnam War veterans who have children that served in Iraq on My Vietnam, Your Iraq. That's tonight on KPBS.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, the national job picture, plus the analysis of Mark Shields and Ramesh Ponnuru. That's Friday on the PBS News Hour.
In the last year, KPBS News has been honored with nearly 3 dozen awards. I'm extremely proud of these honors, and I thank you for your support as we continue to serve our local communities with award-winning news coverage in the years to come.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Each April, our city celebrates Chicano history and culture by gathering for Chicano Park Day in Barrio Logan. There's a parade, traditional dancing, and the famous Chicano Park murals. KPBS arts reporter Angela Carone says since the murals are currently being restored, they will be especially vibrant for the big day.
Chicano Park in San Diego's Barrio Logan neighborhood is a museum in the unlikeliest of places, underneath a web of highway overpasses. During the 1970s, a group of artists looked at the park's concrete pylons, and instead of an eyesore, they saw a canvas. These same artists are back in the park today, restoring 18 of the 72 historic murals.
It is important because if we don't, they're going to disappear for one day. These were painted 30, 40 years ago. And the paints that we use then are not as strong and much more everlasting, and they're better made today.
At the time, artists really didn't have money to buy paint, so their resources were the resources from car dealerships, throwing out discarded paints we all love to use as artists because we don't know what we're going to get, but they used anything they can get their hands up.
These artists were documenting the political and social struggles of their community. They were also celebrating a rich history and culture of Mexican Americans. Portions of that history are now missing, as sections of the murals were removed because of lead in the paint.
This is the areas that were lined out in the report for the lead abatement that had lead paint, so it's been extracted already and removed. And there are certain areas, spots, you see holes here, here, and over here.
These holes will be filled in during the restoration, but contaminated paint isn't the only challenge in preserving the murals.
We have to see a lot of water damage. And plus, the cement expands, contracts through the year. There's fog, there's marine air, there's fallout from the traffic and soot. You know, there's carbons, hydrocarbons that are hitting it all the time.
Oh, I'm just laying out the foundation colors for the clouds. On top of this, I'm going to come in with pinks and grays and a little bit of yellow highlights so the clouds look like early morning sunrise.
Felipe Adame painted 9 of the park's murals, including this one on the ceiling of a bandstand.
The only deterioration that happened on this one, the ceiling cracked because the moisture was collecting up on the roof.
Adame was painting a mural in Mexico in the early 90s and was attacked. His injuries led to rheumatoid arthritis, and he now paints from a wheelchair.
I've converted it into a positive asset because I can wheel myself around much easier than if I were standing up. So I have a recliner already, and I can raise the handle here so I can rest my arm on the ledge here and paint. I can still see and I can still paint. Thank God for that.
With our 40 years of professional expertise, we're doing fantastic work. As you see, some of the murals are already finished with. It's amazing. They look better than they were the first time.
Artist Victor Ochoa is finally able to finish his mural titled All the Way to the Bay, which he started in 1978.
This time that we have a budget is like the first time that I've been able to buy pigments, colors that in my whole life as a mural painter I'd never been able to afford. So we just recently bought 1,100 pounds of acrylics. We had to get a special truck to bring them over. And it's just so amazing to have these colors.
Despite the cold days, the artists are excited to be back working in the park, where many of them took part in protests that preserved this mostly Latino neighborhood.
It's kind of this reunion is not only are we refurbishing the walls, but refurbishing our own spirits, because we were so together back then. We gone in different directions. Now we're coming back, and we're coming grown up and really understand life a little better. But the restoration is important in the meantime because it is our history. It is something that doesn't just belong to the barrio, but it belongs to all San Diego, to the world of arts, to American art, because this is very much an American art phenomenon, you know.
That was Angela Carone reporting. Chicano Park Day will happen in a couple of weeks on Saturday, April 21st in Barrio Logan. 2 critically endangered species are getting special hands-on treatment at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Animal keepers are desensitizing these male Sumatran tiger cubs to human touch in order, they say, to easily handle them for veterinary care. The cubs are only a month old. They are the 24th and 25th birth of the species. Since the park opened in 1972. Each of the cubs gain about a pound every 3 days. The safari park is currently home to 6 Sumatran tigers. There are only about 400 of this species of tigers in the wild left in the world. Keepers expect these cubs will go on display in July.
Today is National Walk to Work Day. For people in City Heights, that may be easier said than done. In March, a group set out to document pedestrian hazards in the neighborhood. All 2.5 miles of City Heights were examined by foot, wheelchair, and stroller. Reporter Megan Burks and video journalist Brian Myers of Speak City Heights show us what they found.
We're going to cross here, you guys. Let's note here. So these cars are coming off the freeway here, and we get the light at the same time that they do. The problem with that is when you enter the intersection as a pedestrian, cars sometimes will turn in front of you. So all of a sudden you're surrounded by cars cutting in front of you and cars behind you. The built environment is basically everything you see around you, from the street design to the buildings to the trees to things that humans play a role in shaping. And all of those things affect how we get around and affect our quality of life. Just like this, I mean, that's not so bad, but sometimes they get even closer. Today, the idea is to document and experience firsthand how the built environment affects our mobility and our safety. We wanted to experience that from the perspective of a wheelchair, from the parent pushing a stroller, and a pedestrian as well. Does anyone know the history of these crosswalks? City Heights was designed to be a walking community. The streetcar actually ran all the way down University Euclid, and you can notice that today by the built environment characteristics of University. Oh! Unfortunately, after World War II, the philosophy that was dominant in the United States, and especially in Southern California, was an autocentric one. The idea was to move cars as quickly as possible and as fast as possible. When we did that, we stopped planning for pedestrians and for transit. Because of the more narrow sidewalks that we encountered, we've noticed that the grade at the driveways is a bit steeper. So that's affecting how the wheelchairs maneuver on the sidewalks.
I was really surprised that as we traveled from the 805 at University all the way down here, how the streets became progressively less hospitable to pedestrians and especially to the disabled.
So the next pedestrian crossing that's east of Euclid is all the way in Winona, and if you notice, the lanes actually open up here. Now there's 4 lanes here. Traffic gets faster, and there isn't any signalized crossing for pedestrians from here all the way to Winona. And if motorists get that green light there at Winona, they're flying around the corner because the next light after that is 52nd. So that's a huge, huge distance between required stops.
There were some areas where there was no pavement and all these, going over all these bumps, and the screws for my foot plates came loose and started dropping.
Tough section there. It was a bad design from the beginning when they built City Heights. They built the building so close to the alleys. There's every block, almost every block in City Heights has an alley. It creates tons of more turning conflicts.
You can't see the car until the very last second. The car doesn't see the pedestrian. There's still a lot of ramps going down into the street that aren't usable by wheelchairs and strollers and what have you. And so those need to be dealt with.
So this is the pedestrian safety project, 50th University, that we had implemented here. The community mobilized together to work with business owners and traffic engineers to make this intersection safer for pedestrians. We had a couple crosswalks installed, pedestrian refuge created in the median, and a number of signs installed. So kind of calm the traffic down here, and it makes it easier to cross. Within the span of 4 years, 114 kids were hit by cars while walking or bicycling within a quarter mile of a City Heights elementary school. So even our school zones are unsafe for people to walk in. A complete street is a road that accommodates all road users, including bicyclists, walkers, transit, people in wheelchairs, motorists, and road users of all ages and abilities. So let's see how much space we have here.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to ride on the curb, correct?
Yeah, that's 34 inches right there.
Yeah, no way that's the
What the people of City Heights want is complete streets. And we know that they work in other neighborhoods, and we know where the funding is to do it. The next step is implementing it and putting those things into the ground.
That story from our media partners, Speak City Heights.
The public square is up next. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
Coming up on Finding Your Roots, husband and wife Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick trace their roots. But is a bigger surprise waiting for the couple?
My biggest fear is that we're cousins.
Find out on Finding Your Roots.
Sunday at 8 on KPBS.
I love KPBS because when I wake up in the morning and that radio station goes on, 89.5 goes on, I know that I am going to get information that I can trust, that I can respect, that I can value, and I know I'm getting the truth.
Some amazing mid-century modern homes in San Diego. On the next episode of San Diego's Historic Places.
Discover the secrets of our past. Watch San Diego's Historic Places, 9 p.m. Monday on KPBS.
Welcome back to the Public Square on KPBS Evening Edition. As we reported earlier, Senator Dianne Feinstein was among the group of officials visiting the San Onofre nuclear generating station today. The plant has been shut down now for 2 months. Feinstein released this statement this afternoon. Chairman Yazgo and Edison CEO Ted Craver assured me that they will not allow the generators in Units 2 and 3 to restart until they are both certain it is absolutely safe. I will hold them to that commitment. Well, we will have more analysis about the shutdown Monday on KPBS Evening Edition. If you would like to comment on this story, send me an email, jfarian@kpbs.org. And of course, you can always weigh in on Twitter or on Facebook.
An F-18 Hornet crashed into an apartment complex in Virginia Beach today. Only minor injuries have been reported so far. An identical type of Navy jet crashed in a University City neighborhood in December 2008, killing 2 women and 2 children. The Padres have another chance against the Los Angeles Dodgers tonight at Petco Park. Game time is 7:05. You can watch and comment on any of the stories you saw tonight on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.
And we'll leave you with a look at the weekend forecast. Good night.